Well, good morning, everybody. From Ephrata, Pennsylvania. That's where I am early this morning. Get a great chance to speak to a group out here today. And we'll be talking a lot about the progress of this winter and what it's going to mean for spring. So I want to kind of preface something I'm going to work on for you over the weekend. And there's a lot of weather forecasts out there right now that are suggesting that the El Nino could rapidly collapse. And there is some historical precedent for that, so I want to talk about it. We're going to do some analysis over the weekend looking at those best analog years, and I'll present that to you on Monday. So I'm really looking forward to that. Plus, we're going to look at spring trends on Monday. So in the meantime, I've got a lot to be discussing here about our next just few days and where I think this pattern is going in the near term. And I wanted to start off, and you've been staring at a map of the latest drought monitor. So this is the one that was released yesterday on Thursday. Now, some of us might be surprised that really we didn't see a whole lot of change in the drought monitor, and I kind of want to explain that briefly here. And the reason why I bring that up is because when you look at how much rainfall we had in the last 7 days, especially down here, you would have imagined to see a bigger change in the overall drought picture in this part of the country. So again, this is the last 7 days of total rainfall, a lot of flooding out of Texas, Arkansas, parts of Oklahoma, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. And we had snowmelt up here adding to the flooding issues. And this has also been the setup, this return of moisture plus the melting of the snow that has really saturated the lower atmosphere and produced just all of the fog that we have been seeing. Now, out west, you know that we're going to continue to talk about the onshore flow that's going to be coming to the northwest first and then to California later in this 2-week time period. And we're also going to be discussing the potential return for moisture back up into the plains. I'm pretty excited about some of the new forecast changes for parts of the western and high plains here in the near term. But I want to just think more about this drought issue because you look at the drought monitor and you're like, wow, that didn't really change much at all here. And I want to make a point as to why. And I'm just going to show you that the drought monitor is a long-term statistic, and that's how we need to use it. It's one of the most vital tools we have in agriculture and many other industries who are reliant on Mother Nature for the supply of water, which I guess is all of us. That's kind of a dumb statement. But the point is, this is one of the best tools we've got in terms of monitoring our drought, but it is a long-term statistic. So I just bring that up because if you look back over the last 6 months, so I went from January 25th all the way back to July 25th last year, you can see why there wasn't a significant change because over that time period, this area, all right, we still have parts of Mississippi and Louisiana, even including the rainfall up until yesterday morning, okay, that are still in that 6-month time period having a top 2, 3, 4 driest such stretches. You can also see the dryness in the UP, the dryness in Iowa, which is not just going back 6 months, but going back 4 years. There's places here that are over 40 inches in deficit in Iowa. And then the Southwest United States, even though there's been some better rains that have come through Arizona and getting into New Mexico, the longer term issues here are still quite prevalent. So just a reminder, when you come back to the drought monitor page, which I hope you all do at some point, there's a lot of great tools across the top you can use. Like if you want to look at the change maps, we've done that. You'll notice that the recent 1-week change just really didn't show a whole lot of difference in this area. Maybe it will next week start to build up another class of improvement. But the other thing I would recommend you do is come over to the data tab and slide down to time series. And this will kind of show you nationally first, but you can change your geographical area if you want and drill all the way down to the county level if you'd like. But I want to look at the national number. And this is just a time series of drought area on the y-axis and time on the x. So it goes back to January of the year 2000, excuse me. So where we currently sit is that we've got about 50% of the country in some form of drought. That would be from abnormally dry up to D4 drought. But the drought categories begin at D1, and we have about 27% of the country in D1. So what I'm expecting to see out of the rest of this winter is some continued improvement overall in these numbers, and it's going to really make a huge difference on our spring, which is why I want to look at spring trends in the next forecast video on Monday. But in the meantime, I got a message on YouTube that my Aunt Alice, I know she watches, and so is my Uncle Ralph. They're over in West Central Illinois, and she said, hey, can you give me an update on the river? And so, yeah, here you go. I'm actually going to do more than that for you, Aunt Alice. This is the latest update of the Mississippi River, which is about 5 feet above low stage. And as we talked about, the river made this huge jump up with some of the really heavy rain and some snow melt. But what I do expect it to do is kind of oscillate like this and just continue through spring to work its way back up here and really improve in its depth. And what I wanted to add to this is that there's a great resource out there. It's on a website called water.weather.gov, pretty easy one, water.weather.gov. And what I've done is at the top, I've clicked on the river observation. You can also click on the river forecast, and you get every single one of the USGS river gauges. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to only show those that are in flood. And when you click on that, it'll just get rid of everything except for the ones that are showing minor to moderate to major flooding. And you can see around the country where that's been. Of course, there's a lot of rivers and streams down here where the heaviest rains have been that are in flooding. But in our neck of the woods in Alice, we've got several of our rivers that are flooding as well. In fact, I drove over twice yesterday, one called the Sangamon River, which is here in Illinois, and it is way outside of its banks. And that water, this water that's in this here, is going to get into that river and create a surplus down here in Memphis, where I continue to monitor this. So great website, water.weather.gov, just to go check out. And by the way, it's not the only thing you got. If you come out here and play around, this is a really fun one to kind of just mess around with for a little while. Okay, from there, let's go have a look at some of the things that we've continued to kind of build a story in. I want to talk about snow next. We have seen a slight adjustment in the forecast models, which aligns, I think, with a little bit of what I showed yesterday, that the position where the jet stream is going to be moving and meandering is going to become a bit farther to the south. So looking out there at that week 2 time frame, basically Groundhog's Day to the 8th, the risk of heavy snow, while it will still be in the northern Sierra, coming down the Sierra Nevada, we've now seen it move more into the Great Basin, getting over toward the Four Corner states. And we're going to really look at why that's going to be the case. But just thinking about that, I wanted to go and show you where we currently stand. So season to date percent of normal snowfall is shown here. And again, it's just up to this point. So it's not the whole season. It's up to this point. And this area in through here, that's going to be adding a lot of this snow. It's going to be quite critical to the success of this whole year. Now, when I think about this year compared to last year, once again, this whole region last year had just so much snow in it. And here we are looking at 2024 at this point, and we've got a lot of places that are, compared to their average, in the 20 to 50% range. Of course, we had the bigger snows through here, and then the event that happened back, what was that, 15th, 16th, 17th, that rolled right into parts of the Mid-South. But New England is also not yet had any of its major big snowstorms that can really turn this over into blues in this side of the country. So I always find this map very instructive, just to kind of keep tabs on where we've been and where we might be going is better shown by looking at some of the flow coming off the Pacific in the near term, which is going to really change this map. So let's just check in again on our basin average snow water equivalent maps for the West. And since the start of the new year, we know we've seen a lot of improvement. Remember, what we're watching for is we like being in this color shade and above by the time we get to March. That's really it. We want to, by the end of March, see most locations reporting 90% or above. So we're on the lookout for these shades of colors, and those are areas that really need some improvement. And I've stressed for a while about the issues I've seen with Montana. I have some good news coming in for these Rockies and for parts of Montana with moisture in this upcoming forecast as we get into week 2. So we'll have to just wait to see how this evolves. But we do expect to see some improvement in this graph going forward. I also just wanted to check in on soil moisture. I'd really like to, when I get home, I don't think my wife will let me, but I'd like to dig a hole in our backyard. I don't know how many husbands have ever said that, but I would like to go down and kind of just do a little verification on this. Now, this is soil moisture percentile, so I'm not going to dig right here where I live and expect to see 80 to 95% of the top 16 inches, which is what we're looking at, saturated. I do know that there's standing water at my house because we had some snow and ice melt, but the soil temps were still frozen, which meant it was a flooding problem. But I'd like to verify, this, because we do not take good measurements of soil moisture across the country. We have a few places that it's taken, but that's one of the biggest and most lacking variables that we have. So this is a map I've not shown you in a while. It's the top 16 inches. We've been looking a lot at the root zone, which is this one. And what I'll talk about in a few moments is, are we going to be able to start to make a dent in this as the snow that's over this area continues to melt going forward? All right. So just looking bigger picture here at these variables, let's now kind of get into the forecast. Not nearly as widespread as yesterday, but we're looking at the still widespread risk of extremely foggy conditions. And it runs up and down the plains. It's in the Midwest, it's in the South, Mid-South, and also parts of New England. And we are going to be seeing a couple of chances for some snow coming out of this last push of moisture that's going to move in through parts of New England as well, plus some more rain. But you can see the flood watches, every one of these polygons in through here that represent the kind of skinny ones, that represents where there's flooding right now. You can see it's down here in the south and up here in parts of Illinois where you saw on the river gauge a few moments ago. So given all of this, let's kind of walk through, I think, what's going to be the main driver. And this top-down view of the jet stream is what's most critical. So just want to be clear, in case anybody's not familiar with these maps, we're looking at wind speed. And you can even see the streamlines kind of giving you an idea on the direction it goes. But when we're looking at the jet stream in the northern hemisphere, it's just going to almost always be moving in some direction from the west to the east. So this is speed. And what we're going to watch over the rest of this week into the weekend is the jet stream is going to average about 200 miles an hour from China almost all the way here to the west coast of the U.S. It'll slow down just as it gets here. I mean, this is the issue, right? It's going to split, it's going to break apart, and that's what's going to give most of the country a bit of a drier go. Now, places that are going to stay wet, well, one system still has to leave the east coast. We'll show you that in a second. And the tip of this kind of flows into the northwest, which means they're going to stay wetter as well as this pattern progresses. But through Sunday into Monday, this is just a classic jet stream split on the end of an extended jet. So again, if you just look at it, it comes in and breaks up just like that. Now, what's kind of funny is I just asked myself this question in my head right now. I'll be honest with you, I don't actually know why the jet will do this. Why at the very tip of the jet does it get to the west coast and split? It's not topography induced, I know that. But I'll have to think about that question to see if I can come up with a better answer. I'll go back and dig through some of my notes from which I used to teach at the university. But it does. Look at that. By February 1st, getting into February 2nd, what a beautiful pattern. There's the end of the jet extension. This will be the last bit of it. Comes pretty far south now rather than targeting Northern California. And look at that. That's a very nice high over low setup. In fact, that is textbook right there. Beginning of February, massive jet stream split, nothing left in the middle, weak flow, very mild temperatures, and just no precip out of it. So what we'll wait on is past that, February 3rd, getting into the 4th and 5th. Now look at the change. The jet retracted, and what it allowed to happen is the speed up to increase here. And southwest flow is the name of the game. So just remember this for the remainder of winter into spring. Southwest flow from California through the Midwest, toward New England, that is the type of flow that likes to build storm systems that come off the Rocky Mountains. They tap into Gulf moisture and they make rain, they make snow, they make it wet. Southwest flow is key. There's only one time of year where northwest flow is important to moisture, and that is summer. And you get northwest flow around big highs. I'll just draw over this because these little weak disturbances come over the top and give you those ridge riding storms. We do not get that any other time of year. Northwest flow is convergent and dry nearly the rest of the year, but summer it is not. But I look out here to like February 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and that's going to be a time period of a jet retraction. And look at that flow. Pretty excited about what this could do in the midsection of the United States, especially here. And I'll come back and kind of talk why in just a few moments. Okay, with all of that in the back of our minds, let's just pick up with where we are right now. Here is kind of I guess this would be the third or fourth push of moisture out of the Gulf from that big high that sat off the coast. So it's moving through New England this morning, some snow up in Maine, parts of Quebec, and then we have a disturbance that's following it. It came through the Four Corner States. It's going to produce some rain here. It's going to slide to the south and roll up the coast as well. So this is now picking up midday today on Friday, getting into Friday night, and into Saturday. We will see thunderstorms along the Gulf Coast out of this. Watch that again. This is overnight tonight, getting into tomorrow afternoon and evening. And then on Saturday night, we're going to keep an eye right in this area for the risk of some strong to severe storms. Rain mostly out of this system until we get into early Sunday morning. And the models all week have toyed with the conversion of some of this over to snow. And now you can see the high-res NAMS solution on that. This is 5 a.m. Central Time on Sunday. And as that rolls into New England, we could get some snow on the backside in parts of the Ohio Valley, Lake Erie, parts of Pennsylvania, New York. And this will roll all the way up to the New England coast as we get through the rest of the day on Sunday. This goes through midday Sunday. You also saw in the northwest, that was just where the flow was kind of coming on. See it? And that's because the jet stream split, sends its moisture, I'm watching right here, just sends its moisture into the northwest. And that's where the target will be on that side of the country. The rest of us are just kind of left for a while to not deal with much. As I mentioned, there's the risk of some stronger storms. Here's the risk for today. Tomorrow, though, is the day I'll be watching in parts of Alabama. Slight risk. The Storm Prediction Center's been on top of this for the last couple of days here. And then we get into day 3, which will be the 28th, and it just kind of the leftovers of this still giving us a chance for some lightning and thunder in this area going along the coast. All right, bigger picture things. Your next week. I don't think there's any surprises in this given the narrative we've carried all week. What you just saw going through is this, and then it goes over drier. So then the flow targets the northwest first, it builds up into that big ridge, right? And then at the end of the next 7 days, that's when the jet slowly creeps its way back farther to the south. And as that occurs, that's what's going to start to change this whole place for week 2 and then eventually here. That's how the pattern will progress. Sorry. All right, let me show you another way of looking at this. You know, yesterday we kind of just discussed how there was some misinformation coming out about atmospheric river events and what they could do in terms of flooding. And just to kind of put another thought to this, I'm just going to show you a map. I haven't shown it to you in a while. I typically look at it a lot when there are big events coming into the west or during the hurricane season. It's showing you something called precipitable water. So in the forecast models, in order to make the rain, they have to account in the model for what we call columnar water content. It's just how much moisture sits between the surface and the top of the atmosphere in the model. And so we add it all up and we say, we'll call that precipitable water. It's how much could come out. Now, as you'll notice, going into this weekend, where's the target in the west? Because the higher up the scale you go, the wetter the conditions could be. You just see the flow splitting, right? It's just beautifully kind of shown here. That's our split. Look at that. So the target area is going to be the northwest as we work our way through the weekend and into early next week. Here comes another big push on Tuesday. Look at that low curling up there and the moisture coming in, while much of the midsection of the country sees drier air. Now, if we were going to be really overly concerned about massive flooding risk, you'd see something like this, but way up here in these shades, and it would extend all the way over the top of California into Nevada or Arizona or Oregon. It's there. There's moisture in this, but it is not the really terrifying atmospheric river events that we can get. But I'm rocking back and forth over the 31st through the 2nd, the 31st through the 2nd. That's when I'm watching that come in. And after that, you'll just notice it doesn't continue. So this was the kind of the misinformation in the tweet that went out that went viral, that there's going to be weeks and weeks and weeks of just massive flooding in the west, and it's primarily going to be a 2 to 3 day event. Now, the Pacific Jet's not done. It'll continue to deliver moisture, but I just wanted to show you the way I look at and try to assess those things. Now we can see the product of all of that on these maps, because what I do here is I graph out the GFS and the European, and we color code the precipitation intensity also by type. So as we play it forward, we've already seen this system here. We talked about it in the high-res NAM, and we also saw that the models are trying to flip this over to some snow. Now notice the GFS more aggressive on the snow farther south, the European leaving it a little bit farther to north, hitting more of like Detroit and this part of Michigan and Indiana rather than most of Ohio. So as we go forward, this is now Sunday at noon, Sunday evening, getting into New England. Just watch the models, getting out there till Monday. Now, I'm going to play the next few days here fast. You're going to see that whole split pattern and then the change in the west. Ready? Watch. Do you see that shift happening? Now let's come back and watch it a little bit slower. Going through Sunday, there is, as the split occurs, going to be a little system that rolls over the top of it and comes toward the Great Lakes. Now watch it. You'll see it in both models. This is Monday morning, Monday afternoon and evening. See the little clipper rolling over the top of this? Actually, it's technically not a clipper. It's just a low going around the edge of the high. And it's going to sneak through the Great Lakes, maybe providing some snow into parts of Wisconsin, the UP, maybe parts of Ontario. And you just rock back and forth and see it eventually trying to make some moisture arrive here in New England. But all the attention is going to go west. So next Wednesday, remember that's when the flow from the ocean hits. This is the 31st through the 1st into the 2nd and into the 3rd. That's when the jet stream starts meandering farther and farther to the south. And what I'm excited about is low pressure forming along the Rockies. Because if that occurs, we can finally get what's needed, which is return flow. This is flow that comes out of the Gulf and makes the turn around, which gives us upslope flow in the northern Rockies. Now, this is way out there with a single model, be careful. I'm not saying that there's prepare for a blizzard in Montana. I'm just saying moisture is going to return, and we need that. You know, I was talking about that earlier in this video. Okay, how much? Let's just go ahead and add up the European model first. So this is playing out there. Now watch, 31st, watch California. See it getting added up there. Second, third, I'm just going to take it on down. I'll watch the very end of this, see where we're going to add that moisture. That's it. That's what I want to see getting into week 2. Now, let's stop it at a week out, just so we can stay clear on what's going to be happening over the next 7 days, and then add the GFS to it. And overall, look at that, the 31st to the 1st, watch California adding up, and then early in that week, there it's adding in the plains as well. But to compare a week to a week, that's what you get. European, higher resolution model, GFS lower, pretty good agreement overall. You can't really complain too much about that. On the snowy side of it, this is the GFS first. It was the snowier model in New England, so I want to show it to you. You can see right in through here where it's trying to put down that snow, plus the system that follows it through the Great Lakes. So remember, I start my blue shading at 4 inches, and I do want to show you beyond that. We'll do that in a second. Let's do the European up to that point. Same forecast time period. We're going to end this at a week. There we go. And notice that in both cases, watch the west. This is 1 week out. This is adding the 3 days following. Look at the west. Look at that. Sierra Nevada need this. Let's do the same thing with the GFS. Yeah, look at that. That's great to see the snow coming into this area. Okay, from here, let's do some probabilities. Look at what's shrunk. This whole area of that was expected to be completely dry. Now in the 10-day forecast, much, much lower probability of staying dry. It is not as though we've cured it, though. This is the chance of getting less than a half inch over the next 10 days of total moisture, a half inch of total moisture. We then look up there who's going to be wet. Let's step it up to who's going to be greater than an inch, and greater than 2 inches, and greater than 4. So again, really just this coastal region picking up more than 4. On the snowy side of it, let's go ahead and do that really quickly. Who's got the best chance at seeing some snow? Here's the probability of an inch. Let's step it up to 3 inches so we can see those areas we talked about here in the east, and then the eventual chances for snow late in the 10-day time period coming into this section of the country, but the best snows are coming right in through here. And if we just keep going up, let's go up to 6 and 12. And let's make a huge jump up to 36 because I want to show you where the bigger snows might be here in the Sierra Nevada. All right, from there, remember, our pattern by the time we get to day 10 is having a hard time breaking that split down. So we might end up getting a bit of an omega look to the pattern for a while, and that's slow. That means any projection we may have had of the arrival of cold air or the movement of the pattern is going to take a while. Anytime you get high over low, so this would be the omega block, it just slows everything down. So the week 2 forecasts stay wet here in all 3 models, but progressing this farther to the east might just take time. That's the main story with that. Okay, moving forward, I want to talk about this snow melt and what's going on underneath it. We've already seen the snow just kind of getting peeled away here. This is snow water equivalent, so it's not depth, it's snow water equivalent. And what I'm interested in is that the soil temperatures underneath this, what are they doing? Because if we're going to get any of that moisture into the soil, we have to get it past that top layer, which can be a barrier if it's frozen. So speaking of where it's frozen, follow this contour line where I make the big jump to these bluer colors. That's where it goes from above freezing to below. This is this morning, and as I play it forward, all this mild air coming in, watch that line creep north. And as it creeps north, we wonder if we're going to be able to take some of that snow with the mild air that's coming in, that's right here, and get it to soak into a place that desperately needs it to soak in. And that's going to be this section of the Midwest, which I've mentioned many times about the long-standing dryness in Iowa. Now, it's not just to say Iowa, it's all through this area. This goes down to Kansas, it goes to Nebraska. It's just in terms of absolutes, there's a couple spots in Iowa that are over 48 inches in deficit over the last 4 years. So how mild is it going to be? Here's Friday's highs, getting into Saturday and Sunday. Look at the northern plains in the west. There's Monday's highs, Tuesdays. It is not out of the realm of possibility that parts of the northern plains crack 50 degrees, maybe even get up towards 60 near Rapid City by Tuesday. This is how the beginning of February starts. That's February 1st, still very mild. And as you know, the day 5 through 10, all the coldest air is locked up in Greenland and Alaska. Now, day 10 through 15, this is when we're expecting some change, but that omega block is going to leave heat in this area longer. So if we're waiting on a big colder outbreak, you may be waiting till the middle of the month. And I'm going to make the same statement I've been making. It will all depend on if we can dislodge the MJO from phases 6 and 7, which are kind of straddling the mild phases versus the cold, and just get this to dive into this area. And if it does, that'll just help dislodge the cold air in Alaska or move it out of Greenland and just give you colder risks. But that may not be till the middle of February or maybe even later than that. Now, the longer range models have come into agreement. I'm still a little confused by them. This is the February forecast from the European on precipitation anomalies, and this is the GFS for February. So the European extended, GFS extended. And both of them are trying to take parts of the Mid-South and the Ohio Valley, getting up to the Great Lakes back over drier. And while we may see a couple of, maybe a week of drier weather in here, I don't see this really sticking around that long. I think the pattern's too active to make that be that way. So I just want to let you know that this drier area, I'm not fully sold out on. I'm also not sold on it being, 5 to 6 inches wetter than average in California during that time frame either. There's good moisture coming in here, but I don't know if it's going to be that wet. So we'll just watch it, the evolution of it, and keep a good eye on it going forward. Okay, just another reminder, what we're going to talk about on Monday. El Niño's peaked. It's been collapsing now for about 3 weeks. Not collapsing. It's been slowly fading. That's the way to talk about it. And what I want to do with this is I want to ask a question we're going to answer over the weekend, which is, let's play this game where we look throughout history to find when we've had an El Niño that peaked around Christmas, and then by the time we got into next fall had already gone into La Nina. We're going to look at all of those years, and we're going to try to assess if there's any of these that are a strong analog to this year. So I'm going to spend some time this weekend thinking about it. And I not only want to give you a forecast of what that might mean for North America going into spring and summer, but I also want to think about what that could mean for South America. And the South American story is largely unchanged. You know that we've looked recently, the NDVI values for Argentina are the highest they've been. We're expecting huge crop numbers out of Argentina. There is drier weather coming into Argentina and southern Brazil, but this is not necessarily going to be a problem. Even though there's going to be some heat coming in with this, I still don't see it as a problem with the crop. Even into southern Brazil, there's going to be a lot of harvest that's going to be done on the very southern edge of this wet weather. But we've been asking this question, is the month of February going to be wet for Brazil? And that's where I'm going to finish today. Because the newer long-range models, this is the European extended, still keep this area wetter, primarily over here. We grow a lot of safrinha corn here, but a lot of cotton as well, like in this section of Bahia. I think there's about a third of the safrinha cotton crops are grown right here. But this is the outlook for February from the European, and this is the outlook from the GFS extended. So it just continues to paint wetter here, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to slow it all down. I just don't. I think that harvest progress will move. We might just see delays because of the replant that happened on soybeans. So the big question will be, does the monsoon shut off early, which we talked about, and we'll get some new updates on that soon as well. Plus, I think the El Nino analysis will help too. So we'll look at that on Monday. Everyone have a great rest of your week and weekend. And Alice, thanks for the great comments. And also, all of you that gave me info on microphones, I'm going to get some ordered here and get them tested out. So I appreciate it. Have a good one. Thanks.